Well, that was cinematic. So here it is, Superman's desk lamp built with individual selenite rods, which obviously don't glow when you take them out of the base, but when you put them into the base, where each one is controlled by an individual neopixel, they have this great diffused glow to them. I've written a detailed instructable to this project, which I will link to in the description below. Let me just take you through a couple of the details. First, you're going to need to buy some of these rods, and I purchased these at a local gem convention. You can buy them on Etsy or eBay, but if you purchase them in person, you'll obviously have the ability to pick out the ones you want and probably have access to a broader selection. I bought 11 of these rods for about $40 in various sizes. So, check your local gem show or rock and mineral store. And the first thing you're going to want to do when you get these rods home is on the bottom of each one, just number them with a pencil, because you'll want to keep track of which rods go into which holes later on. So it won't affect the diffusion of the light. It'll make your life a lot easier later on. And so let's get started with going right to CAD here. The very first thing you're going to do is take a piece of paper, take the end of the rod that you've numbered, and just trace the outline of it with the pencil. And also maybe write down the number of the rod corresponding to the tracing, and also record the length of each rod. So you'll end up with something like this picture, which I did for all the rods that I have in here. I'm going to show you how I modeled the base in Fusion 360, and I'm just going to jump around the timeline for this object a little bit. Again, I have step-by-step instructions for building a base in the instructable, link in the description. Once you've traced the outline for the base of each crystal, you'll want to extrude a body for each one of these in Fusion, and you should extrude it to the length you measured for the crystal. That'll help to make it, when you arrange these later on, to figure out aesthetically what looks pleasing. So you should basically extrude a body for each one of these outlines. When you extrude a body, Fusion 360 is automatically going to number it, and if you do this in the order that you trace them, you'll see that the body is numbered the same as crystal number. So that's base number 11, which I've written in pencil on the bottom of the base. It's body number 11 here. This will make things very convenient later when you're trying to figure out which crystal goes in which hole. So if for some reason the body number doesn't correspond to the crystal number that you've traced, I highly recommend that you just double click it here and rename the body in Fusion. Now the crystals, we trace the outline of the base. If we cut a hole for the crystal exactly that size, it wouldn't fit in. We need to have a little bit of room so that the crystal will slide in easily. So for each one of these items, I'm using the scale command, and I'm scaling it in the X and the Z, so that because this is basically going to be our cutting tool, so I'm making this a little bit bigger now than the actual crystal, so that when I cut the opening, it'll be just a little bit larger to let the crystal slide in. So for each one of your crystals, just scale it up a little bit. Again, I'm using about 10% here. Once you have all the crystals scaled up, basically you want to arrange them into a shape that you find aesthetically pleasing. This is what I came up with. You need to make sure that none of the crystals intersect with one another. Otherwise, when you try and put this together in real life, obviously, the crystals will not fit. They will bump into one another. And it doesn't have to be a shape like this. I was playing around with different designs here, and you could arrange them all vertically like this if you want, or really any other way. It's just got to be something that you're happy with. I used Fusion 360's form editor to sculpt what I hope looks sort of like an organic rock style type base here. So this is something, again, there are lots of tutorials on the web. You can basically just, in Fusion, you can just treat an object like it's clay and kind of, twist and pull it in different directions. And again, it's just really up to you to find what you think is unique and aesthetically pleasing. Now that we have the crystals designed and positioned and the body for the base designed, what we're going to do is use Fusion 360's splitting tool, and we're going to use each of our crystals as the cutting tool here, and we're going to cut the body using them as a tool. And if I hide the crystals now, you'll see that the pieces have actually been cut out here. The bodies that we've cut out are actually still in place. If I hide those also, you will see there are the openings for each of our crystals. And let me point out for just a quick second here, let me go back. Remember how I said it's important that we numbered the crystals. This is what's going to be really great about this. When you're trying to figure out later on which crystal goes into which hole, you can just click on it here, like where does crystal number 5 go? Okay, that's it. You know, you'll be able to figure out from looking at your base and clicking on the specific bodies here and highlighting them, you'll be able to figure out where they go in the base. Trust me, it makes putting this thing together much easier. Now we need to make the holes to mount the neopixels. So let me hide the crystals here for a minute. One of the things that I'm going to do is split the body so that we have a cover for the bottom, and we can make an opening where we'll tuck our wires and things in on the bottom here. So let's just split it with an offset cutting plane. Now you see I have two pieces here. I have the top part of the base and I have the bottom part of the base. So there's the top and there's the bottom. I'm going to hide the bottom for now. Notice how it's flat on the bottom here, and in a minute we're going to hollow that out. But first we're going to make holes inside each one of these openings to mount our neopixels. We're going to use Fusion 360's hole command, and you see we're making this counterbore hole. The top part is just wide enough to accommodate the thickness and the diameter of a neopixel, and the hole itself, it's got to be long enough to at least come out through the bottom here so that we can feed the wiring through. And so you want to do that for each one of these openings. You want to make a hole to mount a neopixel at each one, and then on the bottom there are all the holes where the wires will feed through. We need to cut out some space to hold our ESP controller and all our wiring and tuck it in there when we put that bottom plate back on, right? When we put this cover on here, we need to have some room for the wiring. So all I've done is create a sketch on the bottom part here, on the bottom face of the top part, and I've extruded in some rectangles to cut out some of the material and make some room, and make sure that none of your wire holes end directly on this surface. You need to have openings around each one of these holes so that the wire will be completely contained inside the base. Now your base is finished, and by the way, you don't have to use the form sculpt here. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can create a sketch and just draw a simple rectangle and extrude that and have a very nice looking rectangular base. It'll look great, because the star of the lamp here are the crystals themselves. The base is really not what's the attention getter here. So don't worry, either make a rectangular base, make a sculpted base, your light is going to look fantastic. Now moving on to our neopixels. These are typically sold in sheets, so you'll want to break off an individual neopixel for each one of the crystals that you have. And there are solder pads on each side of the neopixel here for 5 volts, for ground, for data in, and for data out. You want to solder a wire, we're going to say red wire to the 5 volts in. You're going to solder a black wire to the ground in, a green wire to the data in, and a yellow wire to the data out. Length, maybe about like 6 inches. They got to go through the hole and out the bottom of the base, and connect ultimately to one another into the ESP controller. And I used 30 gauge wire. It's very thin and flexible. This is just another quick close-up view here. Again, you can see red to the 5 volts in, black to the ground in, green to the data in, and yellow to the data out. I'm using a little sample section of the base here just to show you how you feed the wires through and how the neopixel mounts in the top. So it's pretty straightforward. You want to feed one of these neopixels through for each one of the crystal cutouts that you made in your base. Instructions for completing the wiring and installing the WLED software on the microcontroller are in my Instructable, so please check that link in the description. Head over there and you will be all set with instructions to get your lamp glowing and ready to insert the crystals. And that's Superman's desk lamp. If you enjoyed this project, please like and subscribe. I have a lot of other cool projects coming. I'll see you next time.